Time for Secure Starts, presented by Visa. For peace of mind online, Visa's got you covered. We are ready to go with our Week 2 starts and sits. Of course, you can see all of Adam Rank's stardom, situm picks on NFL.com/fantasy. Actually, go to NFL.com/rank. I'm pretty sure they're all there, too. You can go check them out there. The quarterback spot. Cam Newton came back into our lives in a big way, and you like the matchup this week, huh, against the Seahawks?
Yeah, I really do. And I think that, a lot of people were, for whatever reason, surprised that Cam Newton is back and ready to go and everything. But he was a good quarterback as recently as 2018. So it shouldn't be that much of a surprise. And I think that Josh McDaniels wanted to bring some of these RPO concepts, something that he had done way back when he brought Tim Tebow into the league. And now he's getting to do it with a better version in Cam Newton. Now, he didn't throw for a lot of yards last week, 155, but that's because the strength of the Dolphins' defense is in its cornerbacks. They signed Byron Jones in the offseason. They have Xavier Howard. So it was obvious the Patriots were going to run the football, and of course, their goal back is Cam Newton. He got a pair of scores. And N'Keal Harry should have had another touchdown, but still it was a solid game from Cam Newton, and he's going up against the Seahawks who gave up a lot of passing yards to the Falcons. So now we'll get to see if he can throw the football. I believe that he can.
Other quarterback pick you like, Dak Prescott, who was pretty good in week 1 and has got a pretty good matchup on tap this week as well.
Yeah, what we're really seeing from Dak is that they're going to love to throw the football this year. And I think that as much as they threw it last season with Jason Garrett when Dak was the quarterback too, Mike McCarthy is taking it to another level. And I think that he got a lot out of Ezekiel Elliott as a receiver out of the backfield. So I really like the way that this team is constructed. And I think that, Marcus, I know you were very positive about Dak Prescott coming into the year, and now we're starting to see it. So to me, if you drafted Dak, there is no reason to ever consider going in another direction. And I continue to believe that this week against the Falcons, a team that Russell Wilson just tore up, that he's going to have a monster game.
Yeah, Dak is one of those guys you can set it and forget it. I mean, he was the QB2 last year, and he looks like he's going to pick up where he left off from last season. All right, running back spot. Everything moves up one notch because of the Marlon Mack injury. We thought Jonathan Taylor was set to have a big year anyway. His role is going to get even bigger now, ranked that he looks like he is the RB1 in it.
Yeah, and it really was. Once you started watching these games, we didn't have the benefit of preseason this year, so we didn't get an opportunity to see how Jonathan Taylor would look on a football field in the NFL. But it's clear to me that this was inevitable. Like, the injury to Marlon Mack was definitely unfortunate. But Jonathan Taylor being the starter was inevitable. He's on a different level. It's just the difference between if you're playing Madden against the computer or if you're playing against your buddy who knows what he's doing. And that's what Jonathan Taylor brings. And I know a lot of you probably spent a lot of fab on Nyheim Hines this week, and he'll be fine. He'll have a role in that offense. But Jonathan Taylor's already catching the ball 6 for 6 on his targets last week. So he is definitely, for the rest of the year, a secure start.
That's the thing. People were wondering whether or not Jonathan Taylor can catch the football, and he showed, at least in week 1, that's not going to be a problem for him. Speaking of catching the football, I was surprised that Austin Ekeler had just 1 target last week, and I know a lot of people were suddenly off the Austin Ekeler bandwagon, but you are staying the course in week 2.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I have to roll in here and tell people that the running back that they drafted at the end of the first round, perhaps the early second round, is still a secure start. But here we are. This is what we're doing. Now, Austin Ekeler carried the ball 19 times against the Cincinnati Bengals. What more do you want? You want your running back to carry the ball close to 20 times. And if the Chargers have that kind of faith in him, then you should feel pretty good about it. Now, obviously, you want him to be targeted in the passing attack. That'll happen. You want him to get into the end zone. That will happen. But what you need to focus on is the usage. Touchdowns are volatile. Receptions shouldn't be as much, but still, you can't count on that. But I think that if you have a floor of 19 rushes, 20 touches every week, you should feel pretty good about starting Austin Ekeler.
That was the big thing for me. He was on the field, I think, about 75% of the snaps. The opportunities are going to be there. Joshua Kelly will have his role. He's going to get in the end zone, I think, a few times this year. But Austin Ekeler is still going to be the guy in that offense for the Chargers this year. All right, wide receiver. Allen Robinson, I know he's having his disagreements right now with the Bears front office, but that's aside. On the field, the guy is still putting up numbers every week.
Absolutely. And I went out on Twitter on Tuesday and I said, Allen Robinson is a top 5 wide receiver and he deserves his money. I hope the Bears pay him immediately. To which a lot of people are like, oh, who's better? Like, oh, what about Michael Thomas? What about Julio? What about DeAndre Hopkins? I'm like, oh, that's interesting. All 3 of those guys play for Hall of Fame level quarterbacks. Allen Robinson has played for Blake Bortles, Mitch Trubisky, and his college quarterback was Christian Hackenberg. So you cannot besmirch the talent of Allen Robinson. And he's got a great matchup this week against the New York Giants. We saw them give up 3 touchdowns despite the addition of James Bradbury during the offseason. Allen Robinson's a great start, as is Tony Miller.
Yeah, like I say, I like Anthony Miller too as a sneaky flex play if you've got the spot for him. All right, Cooper Kupp, you got him here. Is this do you believe, or is this you sort of trying to speak something great into existence?
No, I know you hate Cooper Kupp, and that's
I don't hate Cooper Kupp.
No, you do. Like, you literally hate him. But he has become this touchdown dependent player, and I'm mad at myself for, number one, I got auto picked Cooper Kupp in a couple of spots where I would have taken Bobby Woods ahead of him. And there were some teams where I'm like, well, I should try to diversify a little bit because I have too many shares of Robert Woods just in case. But what we saw out of Cooper Kupp in week 1 was what we saw out of him at the end of last season, where if he doesn't score a touchdown, he's not going to get you a lot of fantasy points. The good news is the Philadelphia Eagles allowed 21 touchdowns to wide receivers last season. That was one of the worst in the NFL. They kept the Washington FT out of the end zone receiver-wise in week 1. But, I mean, this is Cooper Kupp and Jared Goff. This isn't Dwayne Haskins. So I'm giving them the volatility option here. And this might be it for Cooper Kupp, because if he doesn't come through this week, there's going to be a Rams wide receiver who is going to be on my bench probably for the rest of the year.
Wow, man, Cooper Kupp was.
It's harsh, but
it is harsh. Sometimes you just gotta teach them a lesson, and you'll see if they come around because of that. Tight ends, we've talked a lot about them today. We've got a revenge game on tap. Jared Cook going up against his old club, and now no Michael Thomas. Things seem to be opening up for him.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's one of the things that Drew Brees is going to do. If you're not throwing a slant pass to Michael Thomas, you're going to be throwing a short pass to Jared Cook. And I think that where he's really going to make an impact is near the goal line. And anytime they get near that end zone, Jared Cook is going to be their most targeted receiver. So I feel very comfortable starting him this week against the Raiders.
And on the flip side, Jonnu Smith, who I liked as a sleeper this year, got in the end zone. A guy who should have a good year in Tennessee.
Yeah, he looks like a really reliable receiver. We saw a lot more passing from Tennessee on Monday night than we were probably anticipating. And we saw a lot of Jonnu Smith, especially near the goal line. I think 2 tight ends caught touchdowns for the Tennessee Titans. We saw a lot of Corey Davis, who I don't know. I think it was Matthew Berry who described him as this year's Devontae Parker, possibly. And then not enough A.J. Brown. And you're like, oh, this is weird. Like, a lot of people were sort of into A.J. Brown, but I think Jonnu Smith is going to be a very reliable option for you week in and week out.
It's funny. I did not see that Matthew Berry tweet, but I did have that same thought as I was watching that game that, hey, maybe, last year Devontae Parker finally broke out. Maybe this is the Corey Davis year, who knows, which is going to really burn a lot much who invested in A.J. Brown in their fantasy drafts. If this is the Corey Davis year. Man.
Too much, yes.
Not going to be fun. All right, that was Secure Starts presented by Visa. All right. In the interest of fair time, we talked about the starts. We got to talk about some sits. Matthew Stafford, who was okay in week 1 against the Bears. You are out on him in week 2, huh?
Well, he should have had 4 additional points, so but I don't care about that. Like, whatever. Like, listen, I saw Jordan Howard make the same drop against the Falcons in week 1 a couple of years ago. I have no sympathy for the Lions. I have empathy as a human being, but as a Bears fan, I don't care. I don't like the matchup against the Packers. I think their defense is pretty decent, and I don't think that Matthew Stafford is going to go out there and be able to do a lot of things. The one thing that troubled me about the Lions coming into the season is that you can go Google the phrase Matt Patricia is bringing the Patriot way to the Lions. There's an article from 2018. There's an article from 2019, and there's an article from this season. I don't think that Matt Patricia knows. Like, I just don't think he's an NFL coach. And I think, you fired a guy who was going 9-7 getting 10 wins every year and you didn't think that was good enough? So you wanted to swing for the fence with Matt Patricia? It's not working out.
Every time you mention Matt Patricia, I sit up a little bit straighter and make sure my posture is okay because I don't want to be scolded for slouching at all. Drew Lock, I'm still waiting to see whether or not he is the quarterback of the future in Denver. You know that he is not your quarterback in week 2.
Well, yeah, definitely. And you know what? It was Pat McAfee who, speaking of Matthew Stafford, was making that comparison. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. I hadn't thought of that before. And I'm like, okay, I kind of dig that. And I kind of like the way Drew Lock was conducting himself on the field. I liked his post-game press conference and his presence, the way he was kind of uplifting his team. And I was really impressed by him. Wasn't impressed with Jerry Jeudy dropping that pass. And really, he's got such a tough matchup this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers, even though Danny Dimes was able to move the ball on them a little bit. But until he gets a full complement of receivers with him, and I'm talking most notably about Courtland Sutton, I really can't trust him. So if Courtland Sutton returns and is ready to go, I'd feel a little bit better. But I think against the Steelers, I think it's wise just to find some other options.
Yeah, I think this week I wouldn't mess around with that Steelers defense if I got anybody in the Broncos. Maybe Melvin Gordon. Keep an eye on Phillip Lindsay and see what his situation is. So maybe Gordon gets some run, but anybody else, I'm kind of staying away from in Denver. Speaking of running backs, Frank Gore is going to live forever. He's got a revenge game against the team that first brought him into the NFL, but you don't like him this week, huh?
Well, there's a lot of those things, Marcus. Yes, there's a lot of, there's the revenge game factor, and Frank Gore going for 200 yards in this game would be peak 2020. But if I'm just analyzing this as a football analyst, I should look at the 49ers defense and realize that, a team coming off a tough loss like this, they're going to shut down the run. And I think that they're going to be committed. They know they need to shut down the run and force Sam Darnold to try to beat them. I know they do have some injuries on the defensive side of the ball as well, but I really do think that this is going to be a game where, again, you're going to just want to avoid Frank Gore. Sorry.
Yeah. I also think the Niners are going to be a little bit angry. They felt like that one got away. They played sloppy against the Cardinals, and that's probably not going to bode well for the Jets. Chris Carson, I know you weren't big on him last week. Is this you sort of like this is like Carson's revenge here that you're telling people to sit him this week?
Well, here's the thing: is I think that we had Chris Carson as the RB13 last week in our NFL.com fantasy ranking, so it's not like we were crushing the guy, but when I saw that Boston Scott was available, I'm like, well, I know that Boston Scott's going to probably play the full game. Obviously, he was injured. But Chris Carson, I was apprehensive about him because I didn't know how much they were going to use him. And I was right in the fact that he got 6 carries. So my aversion to him for that reason was spot on. What I didn't realize is that they were going to throw him the ball 6 times, and he was going to turn 2 of those into touchdowns. And again, this goes back to the volatility of scoring touchdowns. And I know that a lot of people love to overreact, and you're like, well, this guy scored 2 touchdowns. I got to play him. I'm like, no, you got to look at the usage. Like, obviously, he scored more points than Austin Eckler. And if you're going to be that person who's like, oh, thanks for telling me. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to tell you that 100 times. If you go into a week and you tell me, like, okay, this guy's going to touch the ball 20 times. This guy's going to carry the ball 6 times. Which guy do you want to start? And yep, sometimes it's not going to work out. And you know what? You're sitting there at the blackjack table. You got a 19. I'm telling you not to do it. You hit it. You got a 2. Congratulations. You won. But you know what? Over the course of your lifetime, playing that way is not going to work out for you.
Touchdowns are fickle beasts. I say it all the time, but they landed on the side of Chris Carson in week 1. A couple of sits at wide receivers. You talked about the Jets going against the 49ers. Jamison Crowder seems like a pretty easy sit call this week.
It is, but I think a lot of people will look at, number one, how well he did last week and be like, look how many points he scored. I should probably go up. And, DeAndre Hopkins kind of feasted on the Cardinals, but Jamison Crowder does all his work from the slot. And DeAndre Hopkins did most of his work lined up on the left side. So the 49ers have actually been pretty good over the last couple of years, shutting down the slot receiver. So I don't want to really get into that business. And of course, Jamison Crowder had that huge pop play, the 69-yard touchdown, which was the majority of his points. So I understand that when you're looking on the waiver wire and you're like, wow, look how many points Jamison Crowder had. A little closer inspection shows that it's not quite the performance that you thought it was. Although he was targeted 13 times, he just caught 7 of them, which is, you want to see a little bit of a higher return on that as well. So I just think that this, Jamison Crowder is good to have on your football team, but I don't think you want to put him on your starting line or put him in your starting lineup this week.
I'm just going to go out and say this. Jamison Crowder is not DeAndre Hopkins. I'm just putting that out there for anybody to take that.
I guess I could have summed it up.
So you talked about wearing out the mute button on Twitter recently. I would think that it's going to get some heavy usage because you've got Tyreek Hill as a sit this week.
Well, I mean, if you base this on previous fantasy points, then yes. And I don't want to say that any team has the number of Patrick Mahomes, but the Chargers have done a really nice job against Patrick Mahomes over the last couple of years. And one of the reasons that it stems from, or one of the carryover effects, is that Tyreek Hill does not perform well against the Los Angeles Chargers. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's topped 11 fantasy points in his last 3 games. There are other guys, like Mecole Hardman could be somebody who sneaks in there and gets a touchdown, or perhaps it's a Travis Kelce game. Perhaps it's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's what it's going to be. And I know if you're a person who just wants to instantly react and be like, oh, this guy's a clown, like, obviously, if you have a fantasy football team that starts 3 receivers or has a flex, Tyreek Hill is probably going to be in your lineup. I understand he's got that ability. But let's say you're constructing a daily fantasy team, and the amount of capital you're going to have to put into a player like Tyreek Hill, I'm just telling you there's other options. If you want to be big mad, don't be mad at me. Be mad at the Chargers. Be mad at Andy Reid, who's not getting them the ball in those games. I'm just giving you the facts, and you can decide to do with it whatever you want.
People reacting hastily on social media, that never happens. I don't know what you're talking about.
And by the way, it also, like, and people, like, that is the one thing that people are like, oh, like, Tyreek Hill is a better receiver than Allen Robinson. And I'm like, listen, Tyreek Hill is exciting, and he's faster than Allen Robinson. Why don't you watch some tape for it? Watch some contested catches and tell me that Tyreek Hill is better than Allen Robinson. Like, I got to put that out there right now. And by the way, I know there's also people who are coming out and be like, Adam Thielen's better. Like, stop. 30-year-old Adam Thielen's God, stop. Now you get a block for that. I'm not mute. You're getting an instant block. And another one that I got too was like Juju. And I love Juju. I'm a big Juju guy. You're a big Juju guy. We saw what happens to Juju if his quarterback is not a Hall of Famer. Like, we saw it, right? Like, we all witnessed what happened. Like, that's Mitch Trubisky. People are insane. Insane.
You feel better now?
Yeah, I feel great, actually.
All right, cool. Let's do our tight end sits real quick. Got Chris Herndon. At this point, you might as well just go #NeverJets, at least for week 2, right?
Yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Never
cool.
Jets. Who else? We also had Gronk in there, too. My favorite former 24/7 champion from the WWE. Why? And it's interesting because watching Gronk play football now is kind of like when Raw has these reunion shows and they bring out a dude who hasn't wrestled in 20 years and you're watching him and you're like, dude, don't go to the top rope. Like, please don't do what I think you're going to do. I feel the same way watching Gronk. I'm like, bro, like, let's go back to your other careers. Like, I love you. I want you to be healthy and safe. And OJ Howard can catch those touchdowns. Why don't we do something else? You're fun of you're a precious resource for us. Like, I want you back on TV. And I want you healthy, and I want you doing well.
Just go live your best life, man. I mean, he's wrestling.
Yeah.
He's on the Masked Singer.
You were having so much fun.
Yeah, I'm sure Dancing with the Stars is probably going to be in his future at some point.
Oh, my gosh.
Let's let it happen. Let's just let it happen.
Go do that.
Let's let it happen. By the way, if you want to check out the rest of Adam Rank's starts and sits, go to NFL.com. /rank, go to NFL.com/start/sit. There are many ways. I'm sure it'll appear on Twitter as well, so you can go find it. And you can rage, and he can mute you if that's what you choose to do here in week 2.